Whew. The woke are mad at HBO Euphoria star and trans icon Hunter Schafer because she dared to step outside the approved narrative for non binary people. And all I have to say is, welcome to the party. Alright, so welcome back to the channel today, everyone. So Hunter Schafer likes an Instagram post, and the left just lost their mind. But before we get into that, our sponsor for today is the AP for Liberty shop. Get all your Liberty gear at my friend Austin Peterson's shop, like this George Washington Buddha, and make sure to use the link in the description to also support your girl. Alright, y'all, so Hunter Schafer. If you don't know who she is the trans woman who iconically plays a young trans woman on the HBO TV show Euphoria. Now, I personally like the show. I think she's a terrific actress, and before this, I had no idea where she fell on the ideological spectrum, which I guess I still don't, but this tells me that she isn't all in on the woke agenda. She received a lot of backlash for liking this post on Instagram. It says, I hope all the people, NBs, who fought to have trans identities no longer considered a mental condition that requires dysphoria are happy because you've won. The red states are beginning to agree with you. HRT and gender-affirming surgery are no longer deemed medically necessary for adults in Florida, and it's not going to stop there. That means more trans people will have to pay for their transitions out of pocket, forcing more of us into sex work. Y'all just couldn't let stand binary trans people be the voice of this community. You had to dismantle all of the guidelines around being trans to fit your narrative so you could feel valid, and then you demonized trans people who challenge your ideals and called them true scum, trans medicalist. What you don't understand is that binary trans women and men don't have the luxury of playing around with what it means to be trans the same way that you do. You challenge gender ideology from the safety of a cis body that requires no medical treatment. We have to play the game and live by the guidelines that cis people have created for us because that is how we survive. You're not helping, you're not dismantling the gender binary, you're not expanding the minds of cis people, you are making them hate us. For the last time, I am begging non-binary people to take a seat and let binary trans people, and more specifically black trans women, to be the voices of this community because they are the ones at risk. And if y'all aren't new to this channel, you know that they call me all those names. I've been called true scum, I've been called trans medicalist. I even mentioned this last week when I was on the Dangerous Rhetoric podcast about how I was kicked out of three Reddit groups, three trans Reddit groups. One of them was specifically for talking and saying that you had to have gender dysphoria to be trans. And Hunter didn't just like this post, she actually commented with explanation points. And to this point, I have not seen any backtracking either. Like, no deleting of comments and no apologies. So, good on her. And I mean, this is what we've been saying for a while. I really wish non-binary would take their own letter and run with it instead of co-opting trans. We're not the same. You can go and be the non-binary. It can be the LGBTNQ+. And we can separate the NQ plus because we have different goals. The LGBT fits into the binary. The NQ plus is trying to dismantle that binary. Now, this post obviously still has some of those leftist undertones, like bringing race into it with that black trans women comment at the end. But I do like it because even though it does have those comments, it brings the issue up from another perspective. They will say you don't need dysphoria to be trans. The hard right is agreeing with that, and they will use that to make getting care harder for actual transsexuals, even adults. And we've seen this. This is where I push back on the right a lot, is because they are trying to make it harder for adults to even get care when we should own our own bodies. See, but queer activists don't care about transsexuals, and they really never have. They demonize us for even wanting to pass and then even admitting that we have a disorder. Gender dysphoria is a mental health disorder. It's the reason why we have to transition. It's the driver to make us transition. Like, we don't feel comfortable in our own bodies. We would feel more comfortable being the opposite sex, and gender dysphoria is that driver that makes us move forward and makes it so that we can actually transition. And it's also what makes it so that insurance companies will actually pay for that transition. Now, I have mentioned on here many times that woke ideology is regressive, and while I have spoke mostly about how, telling kids that they're simply trans because of stereotypes will end up hurting trans people, I do like the angle that this is coming from. And though I don't like, the race part because I don't think that has much to play in this conversation that we're having. Um, Maybe it will plant the seed into some more leftists that will end up getting them to think about the issues from a different perspective, and then maybe even full red pilling them, like many of my friends that you've seen on this channel, Carrie, Christina, and others. This reminds me of a couple years ago when Natalie Wynn, aka ContraPoints, took a lot of heat for making a correct assertion that asking transsexuals their pronouns can actually cause dysphoria in us. She said in response to this other tweet, sometimes it's funny when you're the only trans person in a space where everyone is announcing their pronouns, like it gets to you and a hush falls over the room, and you can just check the phone because only cis people need to work on their pronouns game. Natalie said, this happened to me before in hyper woke spaces. Like, it's me and a bunch of cis women, and we all have to go in a circle saying she, her because I'm there. There's this paradox where I can go to a sports bar in North Carolina and be mismammed all night, no question, but in self-consciously trans-inclusive spaces, I have to explain my pronouns and watch woke people awkwardly correct themselves every time they say, you guys. I guess it's good for people who use they, them, and only want gender-neutral language, but it comes at the minor expense of semi-passable transies like me, and that's super fucking hard for us. We take the time and the money and work to be stealth. Like, if you ask my pronouns, it means you've clocked me. And it's definitely awkward when you know that they are only doing it because you're trans. Now, I did have this conversation with a more progressive friend of mine. Yes, I have those offline. We just don't talk politics usually. She was trying to say that it's a good thing to ask pronouns and be inclusive on an Instagram post. I told her about Natalie's statements, and her question was to me is if it would be better if it was something that was normalized for everybody, not just for trans people. And I just simply said, not really. I think you're doing it because you think that you have to treat me with kid gloves. I don't think it is feasible to make society change how we interact for less than 1% of the population. And if you use pronouns outside of your appearance, that's on you to make them known. It's not for anybody else to ask you your pronouns. So it's nice to see transsexuals starting to get a backbone and push back on this notion that we should be labeled the same as non-binary people. And they're starting to wake up to the fact that this notion has caused harm to our cause. We will see how this works out for Hunter in the future. Will she apologize like Natalie did, or will she hold strong? Only time will tell. Will she become more base like Caitlyn Jenner? We'll see. But with that, let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Click that like and subscribe buttons. Go support our sponsors and follow me across all social media platforms. And I will see you next time.